Hello, I am the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com, and together let's consider the Argumentum ad hominem fallacy. And we're going to consider its different flavors, including the abusive form of the ad hominem fallacy, the circumstantial form of the ad hominem fallacy, the Quoque form. Moreover, we can consider the genetic fallacy as a type of ad hominem, poisoning the well, and also guilt by association. We're going to consider each of these in turn. Now, the argumentum ad hominem fallacy is probably the most well-known of the fallacies, but that doesn't necessarily mean everyone has a good understanding of it. Just calling somebody a mean name doesn't count, and arguing against a person can at times be appropriate. So the argumentum ad hominem is an argument against the person. Sometimes arguing against a person is appropriate, so it's not necessarily a fallacy. But when is it a fallacy? But first off, let's consider, at least in a general sense, what's the difference between a good argument and a bad fallacious argument? Well, there are several things we can note, but one thing for sure we can say is that a good argument is to the point, and it has relevant evidence. So remember, in an argument, you have some premises, and these premises are taken as evidence to derive some conclusion. They support some conclusion. So those premises better be relevant to the conclusion. On the other hand, a fallacious argument diverts attention away from the issue at hand. In fact, there's irrelevant evidence. Many textbooks diagram a fallacious argument committed this way. You have an argument, and you should be approaching some declared conclusion, but instead you have some irrelevant diversion instead. And an ad hominem, in a fallacious manner, is an irrelevant diversion. Moreover, we can categorize the ad hominem fallacy as a type of ignorato elenchi fallacy. Now, to be sure, logicians differ in classifying fallacies, but some have grouped the argumentum ad hominem and other fallacies, like the argumentum ad populum, as subtypes of the ignorato elenchi fallacy, and a broad definition of this fallacy allows this. When an argument demonstrates or attempts to demonstrate not the proposed conclusion in question, but some other conclusion, then we have the ignorato elenchi fallacy, ignorance of refutation. An arguer has shifted the argument, changed the subject, or is missing the point. The argument was supposed to be about conclusion X, but the arguer actually argues for conclusion Y. While Y might be related to X, it is not identical to X. And an ad hominem might follow that type of structure. There's supposed to be some conclusion Y, but instead the person goes off track and proves or attempts to prove X, and X is an ad hominem argument. But like I said, just calling somebody a mean name doesn't count as an ad hominem fallacy. Moreover, we can argue against the person. So we should think of it this way. The ad hominem is a fallacy insofar as the issue is not the person. Person 1 makes argument X. Person 2 responds not by addressing X as it stands, but by bringing up an irrelevant issue, namely person 1's character or other personal attributes. So the key is the ad hominem is a fallacy insofar as the issue is not the person. So for example, if someone says, this guy's testimony is worthless, he is a self-serving, lying ideologue, Now, is a lawyer in the courtroom who says this engaging in a fallacy? Well, the answer is no, of course not, because the issue in question is the person's character. That's why it's not a fallacy. Now, with that in mind, let's look at various subsets. So one subset is the abusive ad hominem. The abusive is aimed at a person directly. Instead of addressing a person's actual arguments, there's an irrelevant attack on a person's character. So imagine someone saying, okay, I just gave you a big argument, and here are 10 reasons the U.S. government should have greater immigration controls. Well, you're just a racist, and your argument is racist, replies the journalist. Well, that's just a big red herring. Epithets are commonly used in political discourse as a means to dismiss someone's concrete argument. But clearly they logically do no such thing. Calling someone a racist, a homophobe, an anarchist, a sexist, a statist, a commie, a right-wing extremist, a left-wing extremist, or whatever is no substitute for rational argumentation. Now, the circumstantial version of the ad hominem is aimed at dismissing a person's arguments via alleging particular circumstances affect the argument's cogency. So, for example, someone might say, you're a man, so of course you think that about abortion rights. Your opinion as a man doesn't count. Or someone might argue, your argument against affirmative action is wicked. It only upholds your white privilege. But these should be obvious examples. Okay? So it's true, of course, that women experience different things from men. But by the way, there's no women ideology as such, nor black or white ideology as such. And there's no women's perspective on abortion, since women in fact disagree with each other on the topic. Argumentation over the topic deals with propositions, inferences, and so forth. Those are not properties of sex or sexual organs, but come from minds. And all of us as human beings of whatever particular sex or race or whatever are human precisely because we are rational animals. So dismissing someone's argument because the person is a man, a woman, white, black, or whatever is a textbook example of the Argumentum ad hominem fallacy. Now, the tu quoque fallacy consists of accusing an opponent of hypocrisy. We can call the U2 fallacy. My opponent criticizes something I've done, for example, and then I reply, you've done it too. Well, my reply is a fallacious attempt to disprove his criticism. Or take this. You can't tell me not to become an alcoholic. You are an alcoholic. Well, that doesn't follow, okay? Pointing out inconsistency itself does nothing to disprove a person's argument. In fact, a hypocrite's argument might be perfectly sound. The alcoholic might be right. Don't become an alcoholic. Nonetheless, the tu quoque is not always strictly a fallacy. Pointing out inconsistency might be the correct response. Because when the argument is about the person, a person's inconsistency might be relevant. We also have the genetic fallacy. And this happens when one focuses in on allegedly bad origins of an argument. So with the genetic fallacy, someone might dismiss a person's argument by claiming its origin is from some disreputable person. Or it might be to claim that a person's argument can be dismissed simply because of a supposed psychological origin. So if I say, you're wrong, you only believe in that because your parents do, well, it may be true, maybe. You only believe that because your parents do. But the argument still might be sound. The conclusion might be correct, true. Or if I say, you're wrong, you believe in that because it makes you feel safe. Well, maybe. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Now, the poisoning the well fallacy actually traces back to Cardinal John Henry Newman. And he wrote about this in regards to being a Catholic. So, for example, someone might dismiss his argument simply because he is a Catholic. Now, poisoning the well really is just a preemptive attack. We're put into a position to be biased against the person regardless of what the actual argument may be. Let me kind of fix that, of what the actual argument may be. So yeah, maybe Cardinal Newman is arguing something that Catholics believe in, but you couldn't just say, hey, he's Catholic, therefore I can't take his argument seriously. No, you would have to say, hey, let's look at his argument as it stands, regardless of him being a Catholic or not a Catholic, and evaluate if that argument in fact is sound. Okay, so poisoning the well is a type of ad hominem. So we have poisoning the well, we have the genetic fallacy, we have the tu quoque fallacy, we have the circumstantial ad hominem, and the abusive ad hominem. Now, I am the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com. If you enjoy this type of material, please consider visiting my website at amateurlogician.com and subscribing to my newsletter there. That's one way to keep in touch with me and my work. You can also contact me through my website. I know some people have had difficulty doing that because of a spam problem. My apologies. But I'm trying to fix that issue. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. Be well, and until next time.